Okay, so we've been talking about with the virus, should we be voting by mail in November? And Donald Trump has insisted that vote by mail leads to voter fraud, despite the fact that he votes by mail. We've talked about really it's the swing states, the battlegrounds that are most important to ensure we can vote by mail so that we don't hold down Democratic turnout. Vote by mail or not, California is going to Joe Biden. Vote by mail or not, Massachusetts is going to Joe Biden. But it's those key swing states and even some battleground or purplish red states where it's really important that voting by mail be done. We know that higher turnout is bad for Republicans. And we have really, really good news. Texas federal judge has ruled yesterday that anyone who doesn't want to go out and vote in person in Texas because they are afraid of catching coronavirus is entitled to get an absentee ballot. Now, this is not as good as vote by mail by default, and I'll explain to you why. The best scenario would be the state says every registered voter is going to get an absentee ballot in the mail, whether they request one or not. This is not that. You do have to request an absentee ballot, but in normal circumstances in Texas, you have to justify why are you asking for an absentee ballot. You have to meet certain criteria, and it would be a fight over does fear of catching the virus qualify you for an absentee ballot. We've now heard from District Judge Fred Beery, and Judge Fred Beery says the disability provision applies to any voter who does not have immunity to coronavirus and fears they would catch it at a polling place. This is a very technical ruling. Texas has this election code which defines a disability as a sickness or physical condition that prevents the voter from appearing at the polling place on election day without a likelihood of needing personal assistance or of injuring the voter's health. The court said fear and anxiety is inextricably intertwined with voters' physical health. And if you are apprehensive about going to the going to the in-person ballot box and catching coronavirus, that is a limit on your ability to cast a ballot. So the court decided lack of immunity to the coronavirus counts as a physical condition. You would be entitled to request an absentee ballot under that pretense. Now, there's a few caveats here. You will be able to do this, request an absentee ballot merely for fear of catching coronavirus until this decision goes to trial or the pandemic goes away. So I don't know how you define the pandemic has gone away. In November, if there are fewer cases, if there are fewer deaths, would that potentially be seen as there is no more pandemic and voters will not be allowed to vote for president by mail? Right now, this will apply to the July elections in Texas, for example. July 14th, there's a primary runoff in Texas. Anybody who is afraid of catching coronavirus will be able to request an absentee ballot. November is still more of a question mark. And of course, Republicans don't like it. They're going to fight to have this canceled by the time of the presidential election. You've got the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who says that this could be something that opens the door to fraud. And this is the talking point that the right is choosing to die on, essentially. It's the hill they're choosing to die on. Voting by mail should be available to anybody who wants it, period. The entire state of Oregon has had vote by mail for 20 years, more than 20 years. They've put it in place in 1998. They had a ballot initiative. It passed about 70 to 30. And it's funny how you look at the arguments in 1998 against vote, 97, 98 against vote by mail in Oregon. And it's the exact same thing that Republicans are saying right now. You go back and look at the comments in the 90s in Oregon from people like State Rep Lynn Snodgrass or anti-tax activist Bill Sizemore. In the 90s, they were saying we can't have vote by mail in Oregon. It'll invite election fraud. It'll allow people to pressure others about how they vote. Now, the truth is vote by mail is very popular in Oregon, 81% support in 2003. Really hard to get 80% support for anything right now. But more importantly, 30% of respondents in Oregon in 2003 said they vote more often since vote by mail was enacted. That is what Republicans don't want. That is what scares the hell out of Trump about vote by mail for November of 2020. Let's put vote by mail in place in more places. And let's also understand that we should really focus in on the swing states. Now, on the fraud question, vote by mail does not lead to more fraud. Check out the numbers that we have. Over the last 20 years, 250 million votes have been cast by mail nationally. 1,200 cases of voter fraud in all forms have been identified, 1,100 resulting in criminal convictions. So what do we know? Over the last 20 years, we have had almost no actual voter fraud. It almost always, 1,100 out of 1,200 times, it led to a criminal conviction, meaning you are very likely to get punished and be found guilty if you participate in voter fraud. And when you look at how many of those were with absentee ballots, it's only 200 of the 1,200, okay? So of the almost non-existent voter fraud, 1,200 cases, 1/6 were with absentee ballots. That means 7 or 8 cases per year nationally, okay? 7 or 8, not 7 or 8%, not 0.7 or 0.8%, 7 or 8 cases nationally per year of absentee ballot related voter fraud, which is only 1/6 of the total. Most of them are in person. No methodology is perfect. Fraud is not an issue with vote by mail. Do not let them trick you. Make them provide the evidence of it, because there is no evidence. The numbers are overwhelming.